following presentation is an Delmarva Studios production.
Welcome back, Truth Seekers from around the world. It's time for another edition of the Flat Earth Files. And standing by, we have another great guest for you this evening. As we record, it is Monday, May the 8th. It's just after 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And just a couple quick reminders before we bring in our guest this evening. Please do send your emails to theflatearthfiles@gmail.com. Again, it is theflatearthfiles@gmail.com, like Bernard did. And right now, I am booked out through May, and I have 5 people already set for June. So I have a few more spaces for June. If you'd like to come on the podcast, please do reach out, drop an email, and I'll get you on the schedule as soon as it becomes available. Also, feel free to drop by the website, and you can mingle amongst like-minded people. And that is, of course, theflatearthfiles.com. You can hang in the chat room. You can leave your thoughts in the forum for other folks to opine on. Again, it is theflatearthfiles.com. So there you go. The housekeeping's out of the way. It's time to bring on our very special guest. He reached out a while ago, and we're finally able to connect tonight. And this is Bernard from Georgia. And again, like all the other guests, we'll have his email in the show description. So if Bernard's message resonates with you, which I think it will, you can reach out to him and, leave him your thoughts about tonight's podcast. So without any further ado, let's welcome Bernard to the program. Sir, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
Well, it's really nice to have you on the show. And let's start off by, of course, introducing yourself to everyone, a little bit about your background.
I'm currently employed with the Postal Service. Married, 3 children, 2 grandchildren. I also pastor a church.
Wow.
Yeah.
You pastor a church and you work full-time at the post office?
Yep.
Holy smoke. You are a busy man. What's the size of your congregation right now?
It's a small church.
Okay. I mean, there's no such thing as too small a church. Every person counts, but still, the message is every bit important if you're talking to 5 people or 500, right?
That's right.
That's right. Well, God bless you for all your hard work. And my dad was a career postal worker as well, and he has some interesting stories. This is kind of off topic, but when it comes up, I like to tell it. Back in, I think it was the late 70s, he was... I don't know how long you've had your mail route, but back then they would have their mail route for quite some time. He had it for 7 or 8 years at the time, and he tended to know who worked it or who lived in certain houses. Well, he went to deliver to this certain house, and he saw the glass had been broken in. Basically, the house was being robbed when he showed up, and my dad was a pretty physically fit guy. He was in the military like I was, and the guy tried to run away. My dad tackled him, called the cops, and on the newspaper the next day, the story was the mailman delivers a criminal or something like that. It was really cool. But I know rain, shine, sleet, snow, you guys are always out there. So God bless you for your pastoring in the church and for what you do, bringing the folks their mail.
Thank you.
So you reached out. Let me ask you this first, because you pastor a church. Did you share this message? Because I do look at it as biblical cosmology or biblical truth, however you would like to put it. Is this something that you touch upon in your services?
No, it's kind of like when you talked about your podcast, having to do another podcast.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of one of those things
Understood.
that I kind of keep to myself because I don't want to scare anybody off. You know, my primary job as a pastor is to preach the gospel, and even though I believe the cosmology that I do, I don't think a lot of people are ready for that, and I'm not willing to risk running somebody off because of it at this point. So that I have to wait.
Yeah, and that is something that I haven't even really spoken too much about, because it's a big leap. It really is, and that is something. And again, shout out to the folks who run the media and Hollywood and the TV shows, who have an education, of course, who has able to take the first chapter of Genesis and make it just kind of arbitrary. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, even evolution, the whole 9 yards, but that's what we're dealing with.
Indeed. They want to trivialize God's word. And that's when you go down the truth, when you're in the truth community, when you go down certain rabbit holes, a lot of it is done either to mock or to trivialize the word of God and Jesus Christ. So let's talk a little bit, because I asked you before you came on the program tonight, I had asked you if flat earth was kind of the first rabbit hole that you came upon, and I'm really interested to hear how you came upon that rabbit hole. But you did say that you came across 9/11 before. How did that affect you spiritually as a person, as an American, when you kind of realized that the official story of 9/11 wasn't as described?
It was shocking because I just assumed that everything I was told was correct. I had no reason, until you have a reason not to believe the news, you're just going to believe the news. People have busy lives, working, pastoring the church, and most people are not just naturally just going to be looking for conspiracy. So I had no reason not to believe what I was told. And so when I saw the video, when I saw the planes, I took it for what they said it was. And it wasn't until probably, I don't recall the exact year, but it's probably somewhere around 2016 or 17, that my son mentioned that 9/11 was not what it appears to be, something to that effect. But I didn't think nothing about it.
Sure.
I didn't believe it. And I really don't know how I found the first video. I mean, I think I was bored, because I always like interesting stuff, whether it's UFOs or whatever, anything that's strange or fringe. I've always enjoyed watching those kind of things. And so I don't know why I found a video on 9/11. I don't know if he referred me to one or what. I can't remember exactly what the steps were for me to look at it, but I saw the first video. I don't even remember which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it led me to the one called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. You ever heard of that one?
Yeah, and their website is tremendous, by the way.
Yeah. So when I saw that, it was over 1,500, I believe, architects and engineers that said the tower should not have fallen, and I watched it, and then I realized that Building 7 had fell also, which I didn't know. And I watched every video I could about 9/11 until I was just convinced that what we had been told was not the truth. And so that was shocking. But not only was it shocking, it also, I kind of said to myself, okay, what does this mean? And it means a lot, but couple of things that it means is, it means the news is not the news, because nobody was reporting the truth. This was years after the fact, and I hadn't heard any news reports on the bombs or why the Building 7, and so it just let me know the news is not the news. You can't trust the news. it also means that our government was willing to take the lives of innocent people, not only the ones that died on 9/11, but all of those in Afghanistan and Iraq, the civilians and the soldiers. So it just meant that our government could not be trusted. So it was just really a shock.
It was a huge shock, and especially for me, who had invested so much time in the military and had lost friends over there. And then when you I don't remember what the first one was either. There was so many of them, and my sniff test, if you will, has always been, I think, 3 coincidences, and that's game over. The fact that Lucky Larry Silverstein just happened to take over the contracts in June, just a couple months before. The fact that he upped the insurance. George Bush's brother Marvin was in charge of Securicom, which was responsible for the security, at Newark and Boston. And then you had the Dancing Israel. I mean, the list, we could sit here until midnight and talk about all the fallacies of 9/11. It's very hurtful. And at that point, there's several things that went into me. Number one was, and this is the question that I think correlates with flat Earth. I wonder if you'll agree with me, is nobody would do something like that, or why would they do something like that? Like, why the lie? That's the question I get emailed all the time. Why would they lie? And we address it in a lot of these episodes. And you realize one of our recent guests, maybe it was on my other podcast, had mentioned that, on the back of our bill, our dollar bill, it's, in God we trust, but whose God do they really trust? Is it our God?
Yeah.
When you see things like the truth about 9/11, Oklahoma City, Waco, they killed a sitting U.S. president in front of us, the day that really changed the trajectory of our country. You kind of... You question a lot. Let me ask you this: if the truth about 9/11, if you wouldn't have come upon 9/11, would you been as willing to or open to accept flat Earth?
That's a good question. Maybe because, like I said, I love fringe topics, ancient history, ancient mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because of the fact that I love fringe kind of topics, I might have, but after 9/11, man, anything was possible after that.
Agreed. I think that allowed me to kind of lower my guard a little more and accept that, well, if something this big was intentional, we have to start looking at everything. What part of your life when you came upon flat Earth, where did that fall in?
Well, once you go down the 9/11 rabbit trail, I watched all kinds of videos about 9/11, and which led me to a lot of the conspiracy podcasts. So I started listening to Coast to Coast.
Oh yeah, sure.
I think that was one of my first podcasts, was Coast to Coast. So I started listening to Coast to Coast, and then from Coast to Coast, a lot of times the guests would have a podcast, and I would listen to their podcast. But I was listening to Coast to Coast, and they had the guy with the 100 proofs. I can't think of his name right now.
Oh yeah, the 200 proofs of flat Earth. Was that Eric Dubay?
No, it wasn't Eric Dubay. It was the other one. It was I think it was 100 proofs. It wasn't Eric Dubay, but he was on Coast to Coast.
Okay.
And so when I heard him on Coast to Coast and he was talking about flat Earth, I mean, I had heard about it a little bit before Coast to Coast, but I was trying to figure out, what do they mean by flat Earth? Do they literally mean the Earth is flat? I mean, I was trying to figure out I didn't know if it was a cult or what, because, I'm thinking it can't be flat Earth.
Right.
It's got to be something else. So when he came on Coast to Coast, man, I was just listening. And the biggest thing, I was trying to visualize what he meant, because in my head, I'm trying to think, what does he mean flat Earth, And so she finally got him to explain it. And once he explained it, I could see it, but I still couldn't fully understand it. So And at that time, I think this was like I say, like, I don't know, 2016 or 17, I guess. I can't remember. But so I listened to his YouTube video on 100 proofs. I think it was 100 proofs. I'm certain it wasn't Eric Dubé, it was somebody else. So I listened to that.
Mm-hmm.
And once I listened to it, man, it just made logical sense. You know, so, and then I just listened to a bunch of everything I could find pretty much. And everything just made sense. I saw nothing that did not make sense. And I think creation is simple. I don't think you need a PhD to understand God's creation. So it just made logical sense. I didn't see anything that contradicted the Bible. And to me, even today, the biggest thing to me is water. I mean, water always is going to seek to be level. If it's not level, it's trying to be level. It's running to be level. So when I saw the videos of the boats over the horizon and, you know, put out your camera or your binoculars and they come back, I mean, that was pretty much it, man. I mean, I still had other questions, but I was pretty much convinced, you know. I don't see a reason why it couldn't be flat, you know. I know water is always level, period.
That's right. Yeah, there's no magic trick that you know, they try to use gravity and other type of things, but even their most basic math. And when you ask someone, listen, I always say I was in that boat once too. You could have tracked me down 10 years ago and asked me how far the sun was away. I didn't know it was 93 million miles. I didn't know the distance from the moon and all the other things that you tend to learn when you become a flat earther, because if you were anything like me, those first couple weeks were quite a trip, and you were just lost and you just wanted to consume more information because, you know, there's other rabbit holes that kind of like, wow, but then there's flat earth. And it really, for me, it really changed the game. How about yourself?
Yeah, that was it, man. I mean, I watched so many videos, and this was back when you could find good videos. I watched so many videos, and I'm still convinced that it's not a ball in space. No, I just don't believe that.
Now,
then, you know, like I say, when I first heard about flat Earth, and after 9/11, I still didn't believe the moon landings were fake, because my daughter had mentioned something about the moon landings being fake, and I was like, nah, you know, I just didn't pay attention to it. I mean, I just did not believe that could be true.
Sure.
But then once I started on a flat Earth trail, then I saw videos about the moon landings, and, you know, the more you look at it, I mean, it's not, you're not being brainwashed. You're really just seeing stuff for what it is. I mean, the obvious fact. I mean, even like the Bible, what the Bible says, the moon is a light. You know? And when you look at the moon, you can tell nobody can land on that.
No,
you know, it's literally a light.
And
so,
from a biblical perspective, it said God made two lights, one for the day and one for the night. He didn't say he made one super bright light that will reflect off a dusty ball in the evening. He specifically said it was two lights.
It's literally a light. So, and the more you look at it, you realize nobody can land on this. And even when you look at the footage of the Apollo missions and the shadows at different angles, and, you know, everything, man, you know, you just realize, and the fact we haven't been back, you know, which is impossible. If we really went, there's no reason why we wouldn't go back, you know? So, I mean, it's just too much evidence against us ever going. Too much.
Indeed. Let me ask, since we're with NASA, let me ask you a couple questions there. You had mentioned, and we all had the same type of reaction after we realized the truth about 9/11. You know, we start realizing the tremendous, you know, just the absolute horror that were brought upon, you know, people around the world because of this false flag. And that's what it was. A false flag is there are people who die It's not a hoax. There were a lot of people who died, but they blamed it on someone else. And when you declare an enemy like, it was the war on terror. It wasn't the war on X, this person or this country. It was the war on terror, so they could have an open checkbook and endless enemies to attack. Everything was off limits. And you and I talked about how that, how we felt about that. Now, once you realize that the earth is flat, there's a firmament over us, there's no landing on the moon, did you start researching how much tax money that NASA receives and how you felt about that?
No, that to me, that wasn't something that, I mean, it is a concern, but it wasn't one of my biggest concerns. It was more like, why are they doing it? What's the reason?
That's
and
right.
Same thing with 9/11. I mean, we'll probably never know the reason. All you can do is speculate why.
Yeah.
But I don't believe the primary reason was money. I don't believe the primary reason was, to take over another nation. I believe it's something spiritual,
Yeah.
I believe they're led by darkness, because if you could take that many lives, man, the lives of innocent people, I don't think it's just about money. To me, the money and it's just a fringe benefit, but I don't think that was the primary reason. To me, it was almost like all of those lives to me were almost like a sacrifice.
Agreed.
And so you're dealing with some very, very, very evil people, man. So
yeah, that was I always say that was a ritual event.
Yeah. Because just for money, I don't think so. I mean, those to me, those are the kind of fringe benefits that just go along with it.
Sure.
You hook up your buddies and that make weapons, but to me, it was almost like an offering, And I think the people at the very top are some very dark powers of darkness, controlling people.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. As far as, again, you realize that the earth is flat firmament and there's no such real thing as outer space as is depicted in the movies and television. A thing that I always like to think about, just kind of kick around in my little mind, that's how it works, is what kind of burden do you think was on those three guys? And of course, we're talking about Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and those guys.
Yeah, I mean, that conference that they had, Dave Weiss said they looked like their dog had died, man. I mean, that tells you right there.
Yeah.
That conference that they had, that news conference when they had all three lined up.
Yeah, they looked just mortified. Instead
of looking like they won the Super Bowl, they looked just like somebody died.
Yep.
And that, they got a burden on them, man. And so I don't know the ins and the outs of to what extent they knew and how far they knew in advance, but it's crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
That's a heavy burden to kind of carry that around, knowing that you did not go, but you got to pretend that you did.
Right. It's not like you invented some cool patent, but you really didn't invent it, right? It's not like you invented the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation 3, right? And you took credit for it, even though it wasn't really your invention. You just took credit for it. You're talking about, according to the history books, the greatest accomplishment in mankind. I mean, this isn't small potatoes we're talking about here. I mean, these people's names are etched in history, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's massive, man. And so when you just think about the things that we know about, because there's so much we don't know that they've done. But if you just think about 9/11, the moon landing, Oklahoma City, and I was listening to somebody, during the whole time when they were talking about ISIS and the Taliban, and right after 9/11, and some of the bombings that took place in Europe were the exact same thing. They were, not what they seemed to be. You remember those bombings on the train in Europe? I think it was England.
Yeah, the July 7th 2 bombing, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah. A lot of those were the same thing. So when you just think about how much deception has gone on, man, I mean, you literally don't know what is real and what's fake.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, that's just what we know. What about the things we don't know? It just never ends.
Yeah, and that's something that always disheartened me, because growing up, I always wanted to be a journalist, even though I knew back then I just was a young guy. I did not go to college. I knew it was kind of out of the realm of possibility at the time, but I always admired journalists, and I always imagined them as being champions for the truth. And like I said before, being the unofficial fourth arm of the government, keeping everybody in check. And now it's just weaponized. It's weaponized against us. You have people who pay for cable, and they pay for their own brainwashing.
Yeah, man. Right before I heard about, found out about 9/11, I was listening to, I never knew about, I guess it wasn't like an awakening. I guess it was like a small awakening in a way. Like, just like everybody else, I just always listen to CNN. And I had a job where I could, a vehicle where I had a radio in it. So while I was working, I could listen to the radio. So I started listening to Rush Limbaugh, because, he talk radio, he was on, I would listen to him. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about Rush Limbaugh, nothing. I was just totally CNN, just because, it's the biggest news network. So I just watched it, 24/7. So I started listening to Rush, and I was like, wow, and being a Christian, a lot of the things he said, I agreed with. And to me, that was like an awakening. And I was like, wow, man, and I was all into Republican Party. And I just, at that time, I felt like, man, if everybody could just listen to this other side, man. And to me, it was just like, if everybody could, especially believers, if we could just listen to this, to me, it was just kind of eye-opening. I had no idea that there was an alternative news source.
Yeah.
But after 9/11, man, I just realized it's all the same thing. It doesn't matter. Democrat, Republican, CNN, Fox. Because if we had real journalists, remember, journalists were at ground zero as it was happening. They heard the bombs. You remember the news reels, and they literally heard the bombs.
Absolutely.
And so, if they were real journalists, why was no one asking the question about where the bombs come from?
Yeah, all those folks in the basement who were trying to get out, they're on record. You're hard pressed to find those videos anymore. Back even, I would say, as late as 2016, maybe 2017, you could still find those videos. But there was a massive, just a huge censorship. Anything that challenged the official narrative of 9/11, that particular school in Connecticut, so on and so forth. And of course, we saw tyranny at a whole nother level when COVID came about. If I mentioned anything about the vaccine on my YouTube channel, I got wiped out. So that's why I don't even bother with that anymore. Yeah,
man. If we had real news, then what happened on 9/11 would have been the biggest news story in American history if we had real news.
Absolutely.
But instead of the bombs, instead of questions, instead of real investigative research, what the top story was: weapons of mass destruction. That's what everybody talked about.
Yes, sir.
Not about the bombs, not about how did these guys pull this off, not about why no planes were shot down like they should have been shot down, not about why did the Pentagon didn't have cameras that showed the plane hit the building. The top story was weapons of mass destruction. Fox, CNN, same thing. So that told me it's all the same. Doesn't matter.
And how many times on those newscasts did you ever hear the words Building 7 uttered?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I didn't even know about Building 7, man, and when I watched that video, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, when I saw that, And they talked about building. I was like, what building 7? I was like, what? That's what I'm saying, man. How is that not news? No plane even hit the building. So it's crazy, man. So that just told me, man, it doesn't matter. Fox, CNN, it's all the same thing. It does not matter. So I just gave up on all news altogether.
Yeah, and I talk about trying to find that fine line between being uninformed and misinformed. I think in this day and age, it's more harmful to be misinformed than uninformed. At least if I don't know what's going on, I can't catch their bait and get pulled into their next thing, their next mass shooting, and they like to keep us fighting amongst each other and take the magnifying glass off of the bankers. They continue to print money and more power, eliminate the middle class, and they just want a world of serfdom, and to keep us miserable and as far away from God as possible.
That's it. It's crazy, man. And so we don't know what's coming down the pike next, but just don't believe what you hear on the news. I know that.
No,
that's a fact.
That is for sure. Yeah, I could talk about 9/11 all day. That is just. You're talking about the journalist, and it was funny. There was a guy, I don't know what happened to him. He kind of disappeared. He tracked down, remember good old Donald Rumsfeld, who on September 10th said, oh, by the way, we can't find $2.3 trillion.
Yeah.
And the next day, that the accounting part of the Pentagon is what got hit. But a young man tracked him down, and he was trying to get him to talk about Building 7. And Donald Rumsfeld literally said, "What Building 7? What's that?" And he tried to play it off like he didn't even know what Building 7 was. He was trying to say, when did they start making buildings that came already set up with C4 charges ready to go just in case a building needs to be pulled? Because it takes days, weeks, and months to set a building up for demolition. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that that happened and the lives that were lost. And once you calculate the lives, that tells you, man, they'll do anything. So anything. When I heard about Flat Earth, I wasn't shocked. I was not surprised, man.
Yeah, and
not surprised.
While the globe theory, doesn't take lives like world wars and 9/11 and Oklahoma City does, it takes souls and many more souls. It can lead to many more souls, and Bernard, I get so many emails from people who that the flat earth has led people to God.
That's good.
Absolutely. They say they realize that they're not here by accident, that this was created, right? So it had to be created by someone. So obviously it was God, and they pick up the Bible, and by the time they're done the first chapter of Genesis, they're overwhelmed, and they understand that this place was created just for us.
Yeah, one thing about it, I've never, ever, ever believed in evolution. I've never believed that. To me, that just did not make sense.
Yeah, the Big Bang Theory either. That's just silly.
Yeah, I mean, that just never made sense. Even though I love science, I love science. I love hearing about, I was all into this. Trillions of miles. I got a bunch of it's not a bunch, but I got some videos that I'm gonna send to you.
Oh, awesome.
And one of them I can't quote it word for word, but let me see, can I find it real quick?
Yeah, sure.
It just shows that one of them is let me see. I'm going to just read you the title of it. I'm going to send it to you later. It says, Mysterious Cosmic Heartbeat Detected Billions of Light Years from Earth.
Wow.
So when you read the article, they talk about how they could hear this heartbeat, billions of light, not just one light year, billions of light years. They could hear this sound billions of light years. I mean, when I used to, back in the day when I used to hear stuff like that, I would just be amazed, man.
Oh, yeah.
Just how, wow, man, these guys are smart. I was just, of course, I just believed it. But now I know there's no way possible for them to hear something. That's just like me hearing a rat in your basement in New York from Georgia. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's crazy when you think about it. That I actually believe that they could do what they said they did. But now I just see it's just crazy, man. It's just a bunch of lies.
Indeed.
A bunch of lies. But yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I never believed in evolution ever because it was just impossible. Have you ever heard of the irreducible complexity?
I'm not sure that rings a bell.
It's a Christian apologist came up with the term to describe. He was basically talking about a cell and how a cell, just like imagine a mousetrap. You remember the wooden mousetraps with the spring and the leather?
Yeah, sure.
Old school.
Yep.
And so his point was just like that mousetrap, it has to have every part, and that's pretty simple. A mousetrap is simple. You got the wooden plank, you got the spring, you got the lever that kills the rat, and then you get 5 or 6 pieces.
Sure.
But his point is that it's irreducibly complex. I mean, you got to have every piece in order for it to work. If one piece is missing, it's not going to work. And so he was comparing that to the human cell. Now, the human cell is much more complex, but his point was a cell cannot evolve. Every piece has to be in place. So it's impossible for a cell to evolve. and a cell is supposedly simple, yet it cannot evolve. And so how much more the rest of creation? And so it's almost like what they say is just nonsense. It's just nonsense, man.
Indeed. I'm seeing that this argument was already, I guess it came around in the 60s, but it really took off in 1993 by this guy. His name is Michael, I guess it's pronounced Behe, Behe, who was actually just up north of me here at Lehigh University. He presented a variation of the same argument. Interesting. I'll have to go down check this out tonight.
Yeah, and but so I never believed in evolution, but I was all into space and
sure,
light years, and now I never believed in aliens per se. I believe something was going on, but I just couldn't believe that God would create other beings and not tell us about it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That there could be creatures on another planet, and those creatures could visit this planet and disturb us on this planet, and somehow God forgot to mention that. I just never could get my mind around that being possible. So now everything begins to make a lot more sense,
Yeah, once you realize flat Earth, even for folks who are on the fence, that eliminates that right away, and you realize that was just another part of the deception.
Yeah, it's and I mean, just to think about how they pulled it off, and every time I think about it, I believe that darkness is at the top, dark beings, because when you think about man is not capable, in my opinion, of having a plan, because this is a long-term plan. They started out with evolution, and to me, it's a plan that's going to take hundreds of years to come to pass. You start out with evolution, and then you bring in the aliens, and then you bring everything kind of comes together. But it's a long-term plan. I don't see men coming up with this plan. It's just like you're a child, or when we were kids. I remember when I was 5th and 6th grade, real young. Summer break seemed like an eternity. When you were out for the summer, it just seemed like you were out for. It almost seemed like months and months and months.
Absolutely,
because you were a child. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, an hour seemed like an eternity back in the day when you were little.
That's what I'm saying. And so even as adults, I mean, as men, yeah, we can have a plan for 25 years, a long-term plan, but this plan is over hundreds of years. And to me, just when the Bible talks about to the Lord, the day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day.
Yes, sir.
I think that applies to the spiritual beings also. And so for them to come up with 1,000-year plan is no problem. because they're going to live to see it. We won't live to see it. So it's like all of this stuff comes from the very top, and it's dark beings in control of this, all of this deception, and then the men just carry it out.
Yeah, that's a great point. People talk about 1776, and most people go to July 4th. Well, May 1st was very much as important, if not more important. I mean, George Washington, if you go to D.C. and look at his memorial, he was every bit, if not more, proud of being a Mason, a Freemason, as he was as being the President of the United States.
Yeah. Yep. That's the world we live in, man. It's crazy.
Indeed. And those people are a part of the plan. And again, it's funny. It's summertime. Memorial Day's coming, which means all the big blockbuster movies are coming. And I was mentioning earlier about how people pay for their cable to be brainwashed, and they do the same thing in the summertime with these movies. They all have nefarious meanings behind them. You look at even, was it 78 with the original Superman? They all the names have meanings to them, like Wonder Woman, the WW, Clark Kent. Look at that numerology. It's just a lot of evil with everything. If you remember the story, God came to earth. Back up. Satan tempted Jesus for 40 days and 40 nights, correct? For 40 days. He tempted Jesus. Mm-hmm. And Jesus never said that this world is not yours to give away, right? He never said that. Mm-hmm. So if he can tempt Jesus for over a month, what do you think he's doing to us on a daily basis?
Yeah. Yep. And that's why I try to be gracious to people that don't see as I see, because, first of all, I don't know everything myself. It's a lot of things I believe, but I don't know certain things. I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, I got an idea. I'm sure it's all involved with the end and darkness, but I don't know the fine details of exactly why they pulled off 9/11, or how, or who came up with the idea of deceiving us about where we live. So I like to be gracious to people that don't see what I see, because at one time I didn't see it myself.
Exactly. Yep.
So how can I judge somebody and call them names for not believing certain things or not seeing certain things? Because at one time I didn't believe it. I remember, going back to 9/11, it was either the day of 9/11 or right after, a day or two after. They were showing some Arabs, Muslims in, I don't know what Muslim country it was, but one of them said, Americans did it. Americans did it. And it was like the day of, or like the next day, within 1 or 2 days. And my first thought was, man, how dumb is that? How dumb. I mean, this guy was saying, Americans did it. Americans did it. And I was like, man, how dumb is this dude, man?
Right.
And come to find out, he's right.
He was right.
We are the terrorists.
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
I mean, so that's what I'm saying, man. We can't. I try to be gracious to people that don't see as I see.
Yeah.
Who still thing to come on the news. I try to be gracious, man, because that was me not too long ago. So,
It's very sobering, like you were saying, when you find out, when you realize, because when you're growing up, like, I don't know how old you were, but growing up, I remember just like it was yesterday, the Iran terrorist situation. And then you find out that Reagan and those guys had a deal in place to hold the hostages. And literally an hour after he was sworn in, the hostages were released. And you realize that people, to these people at the very top of the food chain, they're just a number. They're a tool, they're pawns, and they really don't care about you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, these are the things that we have come to realize, but what about the things that we still do not know?
That's the big thing.
It's just really amazing and kind of scary when you think about it, but we know who wins in the end, so it's all good.
That's right. I think it's a matter of waking up as many people as we can, but like you said, being gracious about it. We're blessed to have this knowledge, but like you said, at one point, there was a point in my life where I knew more about baseball statistics than, the Bill of Rights. That's a fact. Part of it is just becoming older and wiser, and things happen for a reason in your life, and you get wisdom. You can get smarts through going to college, but wisdom can only be brought through learning and life lessons.
Yeah, and the whole idea of ancient people being ignorant is false. When you look at the ancient cosmology that I know you've mentioned on the show, and how they view the world and the cosmos, and how it lines up with what the Bible says. I mean, the earth is on pillars. We don't know exactly what that means, but we know it's not moving. We know that we are the center of the universe. There is no billions of light years, as scientists call it. The moon, and I had a picture, a photo that I took. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of them anyway. Mm-hmm. But when I took it, it didn't come out as clear as I wanted it to, so I didn't save it. But it was basically the moon surrounded. The sky looked weird, but it was the moon, the light of the moon, illuminating the clouds that was directly around it. So basically, the moon was in the clouds.
Exactly. It's not 240,000 miles away.
Yeah, and there's no way it could have did what it did, illuminating those clouds, if it was 250,000 miles away. There's just no way it could happen. And so now you see things like that, that you've seen before, but you never really paid attention to it.
Absolutely. That's the other thing. You start to appreciate things around you when you took it for granted. That's, standing out, staring at the moon. I went down to the beach. I'm on the East Coast, Delaware. We went down to Ocean City, Maryland, just stood on the beach and looked at the flat horizon, and then you just smile, and it confirms, it confirms your suspicions.
Yeah. And what I was saying was, the ancients knew these things, yeah, and they were not ignorant. We are the ones who are becoming ignorant.
That's such
because we believe everything the scientists say as if they are gods.
That's right.
We don't even believe our own eyes.
Exactly.
We could see something and not even see it because we've been convinced it's not true. I mean, when you look at the globe, the globes that NASA's fake images from space of the Earth, or you can look at a globe. When you look at a globe, man, and just think about, okay, how is this water not flowing? How can oceans not flow? Even gravity, so if you say gravity does, and I won't even argue with anybody about gravity. I say, okay, but why? We know that rivers flow, water always flows, waterfalls, rivers, streams, water flows. Gravity does not prevent water from flowing, correct?
That's correct.
So even if you give them gravity, gravity does not prevent any water from flowing on planet Earth. The Amazon, rivers flow, streams flow, waterfalls. So gravity does not stop water from flowing. So how is it that gravity is stopping the oceans from overflowing?
Spot on. And I ask people all the time, I said, well, how, if we're on a ball, how do these rivers like the Amazon, how do they flow north? Especially using and here's the other thing that people don't take into consideration. Not only is the Amazon flowing north, but it is flowing north on a curve. So think about how much more it would take for that to happen.
Yeah. It does not make sense. When you start thinking about it, man, even when they say gravity, that still doesn't answer the question, because water still flows on this earth on a daily basis. The oceans, the tides go in and out, the waves crash against the sea. Water's flowing.
Yep.
So why isn't it flowing over its banks if we are on a ball? I mean, that still does not answer the question. It does not make sense, man. And common sense, I mean, if you just use your brain and look at what your eyes are telling you, yeah, something ain't right.
Gravity. We have a big old apple tree in our front yard, and in the summertime, every time an apple hits the ground and falls, we say gravity. It's just silly.
Yeah.
And, look at Tesla, Nicholas Tesla. He warned us that he saw, and this is back in the early 1900s, he saw science was being hijacked. And they were just, reverse engineering math problems to get numbers to fit their narrative.
Yeah, they put a math problem on a chalkboard, a math problem that fills up the entire chalkboard.
Yeah.
But it's just a math problem, man. That still don't prove anything.
That's
you can make a math problem about something that don't even exist. A math problem is just a math problem. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove or disprove anything.
No, and that goes back to what you said earlier. It's a shame that people are more willing to listen to someone on the news versus what they see right in front of their eyes, what they can smell, what they can taste, what they can hear, what they can feel.
Yeah, scientism is real, man, and I've seen because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I listen to like archaeologists, for example, that have been shunned just because they won't go with the flow. You're banned, you're blackballed, you're not given tenure at colleges. If you don't agree with the status quo, man, that's just it. And so it's every discipline of science you can name, every discipline of academics you can name. They got the status quo, and if you don't get with the program, man, that's it.
Yeah, I can tell you personally. I know Dr. Jim Fetzer personally. I haven't talked to him in a while, but we've talked many times, both on the radio and offline. He wrote a book about what he thought. He put hundreds of hours into his, into his investigations, and he decided he came to a certain conclusion about Sandy Hook, and he wrote the book. And he was blackballed by his university. You can go to the university website where his narrative is, Dr. Jim Fetzer, and there's a huge, how they've disassociated themselves from them. So again, here we are in a country we're supposed to have, people say, oh, you're from America, you have freedom of speech, freedom of this, freedom of that, Second Amendment. And then again, there's the America on paper, and then there's the United States that we can see, that we've experienced. We understand that a lot of it is a fallacy, and it almost feels like we've entered an agreement with like a 1970s used car salesman.
Yeah. This particular archaeologist I was listening to, he was, I think he was a student at the time, and they were out on a dig, and they told him. He was digging at a certain depth. They take layer by layer. And so once they got to a certain depth, the professor told him, okay, you can stop digging because there's nothing else below this point, because I guess they reached a certain strata which indicated a certain age. And the professor said there was nothing else below this point. He said, well, why can't I dig further? He said, because there's nothing there. He said, well, how will I know if I don't dig? And that was the beginning of his eyes being open. The professor said, no, you can't dig any further, because if you do, you won't find anything. But he said, well, how will I know if I don't dig? You know what I'm saying? Just common sense, man.
Right. Let me find out for myself. Isn't that what's supposed to be? Isn't that what science is supposed to be all about? Continue to question it,
It's supposed to be. And that was the beginning of his eyes being open, and he was blackballed ever since, man, because he found things that didn't make sense according to their timeline. And I know you heard that a million times. They found a whole lot of things that don't fit the timeline.
Oh yeah, but
they don't recognize it. They just discard it.
Exactly.
Which makes no sense, man. I mean, it's frustrating. On the one hand, I like learning and listening, but at the same time, man, it can be frustrating, man. It can be like, this is crazy. I mean, at some point, you just get kind of tired, man. Like, I don't care where you turn; it's just deception.
And for me, that again, to me too, that's the most frustrating thing when I try to do research for certain subjects. I mean, when everything is based on lies, it's hard to discern what's true and what's not.
Yeah,
everything is based on lies. So I mean, if you're somebody hands you a map and they tell you to find this area with an X marked on there, but the map is all jacked up, you're probably never going to find the X, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're dealing with here.
Yep. Now I got a question. I know you've seen some of these ancient maps.
Yeah, sure.
And I got these in my notes. I'm gonna send you all of this stuff. It's not a whole lot of stuff, but I think one of them is a map from the 1500s, and I forget the name of the map, but I think it was supposed to be made around the same time as the Gleason's map. But this map shows Antarctica as it is today.
Okay, so you're talking about the Oberna map. I think it's
sure.
Urbano Monte. Yeah. It was in the 1580s, and it shows Antarctica in a circle. Yeah. But also, it shows some of it like white, like maybe it's ice, but some of it green too, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was saying that to say, I wonder how long have they been putting stuff out in order to confuse people. So that map, from what I've seen, it shows Antarctica basically as it is today.
Yes, sir.
And that was from the 1530s, I believe.
If it's the Urbano map, I think it was later, 1587, but 1500s is still, that's the time Copernicus, after Reformation, when Copernicus was pushing his heliocentric model. So this would have been, about 40 years afterwards.
Yeah, it's the Orontius Phoenicius. Does that ring a bell? Orontius is Oronteus Finaeus map.
Let's see. Oh, okay. It was the one that's kind of shaped like a butterfly. The Orontius Phineas map?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Okay. That is interesting. Yeah, this is different than the other one I was looking at. That is very interesting.
Yeah.
This was 15. Yeah, you're right. 1531. That's so weird. That is just almost exactly the same time that Copernicus, was hollering about heliocentrism. And it's interesting that there was an article written just a month ago on this website that talks about Antarctica on this map looks ice-free, which certain aspects of the other map, the Urbano Monte map, some of it looked icy, but some of it was also green. Very interesting.
Yeah, I said that to say, I question a lot of stuff, man. I mean, because the powers of darkness, they got a plan. And so just like with the Admiral Byrd videos.
Oh, sure.
I'm kind of like Eric Dubé on that one. I don't know about anything comes from the government, man. I'm questioning it. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Because they got a plan, and they've been working this plan for a long time. And so I'm not saying it's false what he said, but I question anything that comes from the government. Anything.
Yeah, I think Admiral Byrd was I don't even know if it was 50-50. Obviously, I think his journal was to distract from the truth. I think it was just a diversion.
Yeah.
I don't believe any of the nonsense that his aircraft was taken over by them and guided in. No.
Basically, anything comes from the government, man. You got to, it can't be trusted, really.
I couldn't agree more. Trust me. Something I wanted to ask you before I forget, and I normally ask this earlier, when you finally came upon Flat Earth and accepted it, and I'm sure after all my goodness, I've been lied to, there was a certain extent of excitement. Did you were you willing to share that with folks close to you, and how was it received?
Yeah, I told my kids, because my son, he's kind of like me. He's always been into conspiracy stuff. He's the one who told me about 9/11. So I told him, I told my kids, I told my wife, and they all pretty much received it. They don't dig into it like I do. But they agree that the government can't be trusted. So that they don't. They're pretty much in agreement with me. Put it that way.
That's great.
But they don't take the time to dig into it like I do.
Right. That's it. Your son. This sounds like
but
you did.
Son, but my son did. My son really got into it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was the thing I ran into. My wife was extremely receptive. But when you start to go outside the family to like siblings, etc., you get that look like, do we need to commit you?
Yeah. Yep. So, and I can understand, man. I can understand.
Sure, we were all that guy. Yeah.
Even things that are not related to flat Earth. I mean, like, I watch videos about the ancient pyramids. It's a guy. He has a YouTube YouTube show called Uncharted X. And he looks at the precision in the pyramids, some of the architecture, other architecture, obelisk and vases that they have found. Some of these vases, man, are super thin. They are perfect. And he's making the point that, man, the Egyptians didn't make this stuff. So you ought to check out Uncharted X. He's real good.
So,
and his point is that this was not made by the Egyptians.
So what are your thoughts on the pyramids, and what do you think they're all about?
I have no idea what they're about, but I don't believe the Egyptians made them. I believe it was probably made before the flood.
Really? That's very interesting.
Yeah. If you look at them, man, not just the pyramids, but some of the sculptures. Now, the Egyptians did make some that were pretty amazing, but it's nothing like the ones that are older. Some of them are symmetrically perfect. Some of them have holes drilled in them. Some of the stones, there's no way you could make these cut these stones with the tools that they say the Egyptians had. Yeah, so if you look at his YouTube channel, Uncharted X, you'll be amazed.
You make a great point that I'm not sure I ever connected together. Back then, I mean, they had the wherewithal to build Babel, which was, according to the Bible, was trying to reach heaven, which we know today is the firmament. So if they were able to build something like that, that you make a great point, that could have been something done back in that time as well.
Yeah. Bottom line, if you watch his show, and I've heard this in different places, other places also, you can tell the things that the Egyptians did build, and you can tell the things that they didn't build. Just put it that way, that they didn't make, because those things are basically perfect. The symmetry is perfect. The vases that they found, some of the vases that they found, you could tell the crude vases. But what they did was, when you look at his show, you will see what happened was the Egyptians, they put their names on these things. So they scribed their names on these structures, and you can tell the difference between this precise sculpture compared to the writing on the sculpture. The writings on the sculpture is primitive. It's not perfect. It's crude, but the sculpture itself is perfect. So they don't match.
That's really intriguing. What was it? You said it was a YouTube channel?
Yeah, called Uncharted X.
Uncharted X. Because I want to put the link in the show description forever. Okay, there we go. His name is Ben Van Kerkwijk.
I believe so. Yeah, it's Uncharted X. Yeah, his videos are amazing.
Well, okay. And if you're listening, folks, I'll put that in the show description as well. It looks very interesting. And he's got, he's closing in on 500,000 subscribers. So he's got to be putting out some good content.
Yeah, check out that one. Well, check out all of them, but check out that one about the vases. It's amazing. How can you get granite to be so thin that you can shine a light through it? Yeah,
I'm seeing that. It looks like one of his more popular scanning a pre-dynast, granite face, 1,000th of an. Wow, that is incredibly thin.
That's what I'm saying.
Wow,
you ain't gonna do that with a stone.
No,
yeah, it's crazy.
And I saw
it's amazing. Yeah, but to answer, I think I don't believe it was the Egyptians. And I don't know. It's just a thought. I believe it probably may have been done before the flood, possibly by the fallen angels in some way. So that's kind of my take on that. But who knows?
That's really interesting.
Either way, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. But that is interesting. They want you to believe that the Egyptians did that. And a lot of it never really made any sense, right?
And then when you watch his video, you'll see the exact same thing, man. The academia is blackballing anybody who says anything other than the Egyptians did it. That's it. Same thing.
Wow.
He said when you go to Egypt, they make you watch a video showing you that the Egyptians made all this stuff. You got to sit and watch this video first before you go on the tour. and they put in your head, yeah, the Egyptians they did all of this with stones and brass tools. Copper tools. Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, I've heard everything from there was only once a year they would have this great flood, and they would use the flood to help get the stones up there. I've heard they're not really blocks; they were just formed concrete. So they would build the forms and then pour the concrete. I've heard it all.
Yeah.
And your theory certainly makes a lot of sense. And you look at the ziggurat of Ur in Iraq. These things are just. I think you're right. And even I read an article lately where I forget where it was, but they took a test from the late 1800s and gave it to their students, and I think 85% of the students failed. That's we're definitely not getting any smarter now. Technology wise, we're becoming more tech savvy. We have information at our fingertips, but if that information is no good to us, if it's full of lies and deceit, then what good does it do us?
Yeah, I would say. Do you remember this guy called Balls Out Physics?
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. You already know about him. Yeah. I wish we had more guys like that.
Yep. These are people that actually put it to the test.
Yeah, I not only love what he put out, but I also loved his attitude.
Yep.
I didn't know if you knew about him or not.
Yep. I am aware of him. He's got a great, and he presented it, like you said, he presented it really well too.
Yeah. I like his attitude. He didn't come across saying he knew everything.
He was not cocky whatsoever.
Yeah.
No.
No, man. I love that guy, man. I wish we had him back making videos.
Yep. Agreed. But again, if you're catching flack, that means you're over the target. And a lot of these people who've been booted from YouTube, unfortunately, it's hard to track them down once they're gone.
Yeah, I think he, from what I remember, it wasn't that he got booted.
He just moved on.
His employer found out what he was doing, what he believed.
Oh, wow.
And he had to stop because basically, he was about to lose his job.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah, but I loved his show, man.
Yeah, For sure. Wow, we have really covered the gamut. Was there anything else that you had that we hadn't touched on yet that you wanted to bring up?
No, I'm glad I found your show. Love the show, love the guest. I wish you could track down the guy balls out physics and maybe he could come on. But yeah, other than that, man, yeah, just no further questions. Just enjoy listening to your show. Glad to have this conversation.
Do you remember? I haven't looked in a while. Did he leave his channel up, or did he have to take it down?
I found some stuff still on YouTube. That's how I found it, man. I sent you a link because I didn't know if you knew about him or not. I just got a few things I wanted to send you, and he still has some videos on YouTube, so they're still up there. They're still on YouTube.
Okay. Yep. They're definitely making it hard to find. I put them in the search engine.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to find. Yeah, but I found them. Yeah.
That is so sad. Well, listen, it's been great. I'm so glad that we were finally able to catch up with each other. I know you're an extremely busy person, and we appreciate you for what you do for us and spreading the word of God and all the knowledge that you gave us today. And I hope Brian Mullen, I think his name was. Yep.
Yep.
There we go. But it's been a real pleasure meeting you. And for the folks listening again, if Bernard's message resonates with you, please do. We'll put his email in the show description, and I'll put other things as well. I'll put the channel we just talked about, the Uncharted X, and then I'll also put a really cool link. I'd mentioned the superheroes and the hidden meanings behind that. There's a very cool video I have for that as well. And again, we thank everyone who's been a part of this journey. We still have 5 more people scheduled for May. We'll take a break from Memorial Day weekend until about the 10th of June. Catch my breath and recharge my battery, spend time with the family, and then we'll go strong until the Christmas break. Again, Bernard, thank you so much for joining us and all the information you gave us today, sir.
Thank you, George. Thank you for your show. Keep up the good work, man. Don't go nowhere.
I won't. God bless you, and God bless all the listeners, and we'll talk again real soon, everybody.
Hey, hon, we really need new phones.
T-Mobile will cover the cost of 4 amazing new iPhone 15s, and each line is only $25 a month.
New iPhone 15s? Best new year ever.
Get 4 iPhone 15s on us with eligible trade-in when you switch to T-Mobile.
Minimum of 4 lines for $25 per line per month with autopay discount using debit or bank account. $5 more per line without autopay, plus taxes and fees. Phone fee at 24 monthly bill credits for well-qualified customers. Contact us before canceling account to continue bill credits or credit stop and balance on required finance agreement due. $35 per line connection charge applies. See T-Mobile.com.
T-Mobile has invested billions to light up America's largest 5G network, from big cities to small towns, including right here in yours. And great coverage is just the beginning. Right now, families and small businesses can save up to 20% versus AT&T and Verizon when they switch. Visit your local T-Mobile store today.
Plan savings with 2 to 3 lines of T-Mobile Essentials versus comparable available plans. Plan features and taxes and fees may vary.